Europe, the old continent with its rich history and incredible scenery, make it the perfect place for aerial photography and video. But before you bring your drone here, get it out and start flying, it's not that simple. There's some important information that you need to know and some formalities that are required before you can use your drone in Europe. And that is what I'm going to talk about in today's video. So let's get right into it. If you're new here, my name's Jonny. I'm originally from the UK, but I've been living and working in Spain for the past 5.5 years. On this channel, I talk a lot about life in Spain, personal finances here, saving, investing, and I share my travels around the world as well. And with that said, this video is a little bit outside of the box of what I would normally do on this channel, but I think it's a very interesting topic to cover nevertheless. And there may be people watching, especially content creators, photographers, videographers, or even drone hobbyists that may find this very interesting because of all the fun that comes with having a drone and the potential to enjoy it in Europe. I myself am actually a new drone owner and operator. I recently got a DJI Mini 4K, which I've had the chance to fly in 2 European countries, which I'll talk about throughout the video, because I wanted to try something new and have a go at capturing aerial footage. It was something that had been on my mind for quite a while, but I'd been hesitant and kind of on the fence about it because of all of the regulation and rules that come with having a drone in Europe. In the end, I decided to take the plunge, get a drone, and just go for it. And along the way, deal with all the bureaucracy and rules that come with it, which is what I'm going to talk about in this video. And so if you legally want to operate and fly a drone in the EU, here are the rules that you need to know. And let's start with the role of the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, also known as the EASA. This is a body that essentially tries to homogenize rules and regulations regarding drones, UASs, across the different member states of the EASA, which are essentially the 27 EU member countries, along with Switzerland, Norway, Liechtenstein, and Iceland. And so let's start with people who are essentially residents of an EU member country or a member of the EEA, and essentially therefore resident and operating a drone in an EASA member state. If that describes your situation, what you'll need to do is register as a UAS operator in your home country, going through the relevant local bodies to register, and that will then give you an operator ID, which is valid in all EASA member countries. And so what that essentially means is that by registering in one country, your registration is valid across all of the other EASA member states, and no additional registration is required as long as you follow the rules of those countries. And so this pretty much describes my situation. So I registered as a UAS operator in Spain. I have an EASA operator ID that was given to me by the Spanish authorities, and that means that with my operator ID, I can fly in Spain, in Portugal, in France, in Germany, for example, as long as I comply with the national drone legislation of those countries. And the registration process in Spain, I have to say, is relatively straightforward. It was all done online, very quick. You simply give your name, your ID, details about your drone, like the serial number, the model, the category, and in less than 5 minutes, I had my EASA drone operator ID. I should mention as well that once you have this EASA operator ID, you should also display it on the drone as well. And in the case where it's possible, as this is not enabled on all drone models yet, upload it to the UAS digital ID system of the drone. So that's if you live in an EASA country. What if you don't live in an EASA country, like the UK or the US, for example? Well, if you're registered in these countries, essentially your registration in the UK or your registration in the US will not be recognized by the EASA. And the entire process that I described for residents of EASA countries is essentially what you'll have to go through. So let's say that someone from the UK has a drone, they're registered with the Civil Aviation Authority in the UK, and they want to bring their drone over to Spain to do some nice photography, video shots on holiday. What they essentially has to do is register with the Spanish authorities, and so you would essentially have to follow that same process as EASA residents had gone through to register and operate with the drone in the country that you're visiting. And the same as for EASA residents, once you've got your operator ID, that would also be valid in other EASA countries as well. So let's say you're on holiday in Spain and then you decide to take a road trip to Portugal as part of that trip, then that EASA operator ID would be valid for that part of the trip as well. And so that's how to register as a drone operator. It's really important to keep in mind as well that once you're registered as a drone operator, that essentially makes you the person responsible for that drone. So let's say someone else has a go at your drone. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but let's say they crash or they break some rule or something, like ultimately the onus and responsibility falls on you, the drone operator, because that's who the drone is registered under and you're considered the responsible person for that. So now let's talk a little bit about the open category for drones and what are kind of the requirements regulations and rules for each kind of group that exists within the open category. It's important to note as well that only newer drones will have these labels on with the category like C0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. because it's a relatively new implementation from the EASA. So a lot of legacy drones won't have this, and so they'll essentially come with more restrictions by nature essentially. Anyways, that said, there are 3 subcategories within the open category. So you've got A1, A2, and A3. So A1 is for drones that weigh less than 250 grams. So you'll see a lot of drones these days, especially the likes of the Mini 4K, for example. I think the Mini 2 also comes under this. I think the DJI Neo is also under 250 grams. They're specifically designed at those weights so that you don't need to register them. However, one way or another, even though drone manufacturers seem to have found a loophole here to avoid the need to register, in the majority of cases, it does seem that you will have to register your drone as well. The only cases where you don't need to register your drone in this category is if it's under that 250 gram weight limit, and if it doesn't have a camera, which a lot of drones, of course, and especially people watching this video, will have cameras on their drones because that's kind of what they want to do. They want to take aerial footage, and so essentially that kind of invalidates the being under the weight limit and you have to register the drone. Or if your drone is essentially classed as a toy, then you won't need to register it as well. But yeah, in the majority of cases, like, some form of registration will be required for the drone. It might not be formally registering the drone. I think in my case, I just listed the drone that I owned when I was applying for my operator ID, and that was kind of it. So I guess that essentially counts as registering the drone. In this A1 category, what you can do is you can fly over people, but you can't fly over crowds of people. You've then got the A2 category, which is essentially drones that weigh less than 4 kilos and that have a C2 label. So you can essentially fly within 30 meters of people at normal speed or within 5 meters in slow mode. But again, as you'll see as we go through the video, I don't recommend flying close to people. Explain it more later in the video, as we said. But for drones that fall within the A2 grouping, you'll need essentially a certificate of competency to be able to fly drones that are within that category. And with the A3 group, you're essentially not supposed to fly close to people. You should fly far away from them. And that's actually where a lot of the legacy drones are also classified as well. And that essentially means that you have to keep at least 150 meters away from residential, industrial property, and recreational areas. And there is training required if your drone falls within A3 as well, but it's only an online training. So a bit more straightforward than the A2. And so with all of that, what does this mean for actually flying the drone in different EASA countries? And the answer, which you're not going to like probably, is it really depends on the country. I'm going to give you the examples of the 2 countries that I've flown drones in. So the first one is Spain. So Spain has quite strict rules as to where and when you can fly. Spain's airspace map for drones, let's call it, is called Drones en Aire. We'll put a screen recording on the screen of what it looks like. But honestly, if you open this thing and you see the number of different layers and different categories of airspace there are, and at different heights and whatever, then you're going to go crazy, honestly. So to try and simplify this for you in Spain, any area that is very close to a major airport, like in Madrid or in Barcelona. Essentially, those 2 cities in general are pretty much off limits, like within the confines of the city. Also off limits are if you're close to helipads, aerodromes, certain commercial industrial areas as well. There are places where drone flying is allowed, but no video or photography with the drone is allowed. Some places are more restricted depending on the altitude at which you're flying. And you can see from on the map where your maximum altitude is 45 meters, 60 meters, 90 meters, or 120 meters. And what will be a great disappointment to many people as well is that in national parks, protected areas, and especially areas around the coast, there tend to be restrictions in place as well. The conclusion I came to for using the drone in Spain is that you have to go to the middle of absolutely nowhere, where there's nobody, nothing, a countryside with nobody or no people around, essentially, where you can fly your drone in peace and not have to worry about violating airspace rules, temporary restrictions, altitude, all that kind of stuff. However, in some areas where there are restrictions, it may actually be possible for you to fly it, provided that you notify the Spanish Ministry of Defense with 5 days prior notice to the flight. And from what I've seen from other YouTubers, simply notifying them, even if they don't respond, no news is good news in that respect. And if you don't hear anything back, then technically the flight is authorized. But again, if you're flying over areas where there are people, where there's property, where there's buildings and stuff, like, you might upset some people, and I personally would rather not take that risk unless I've got like clear authorization from a certain private company or government body that says yes, this is authorized. So that's been my experience in Spain. Now, let me contrast that with my experience in Cyprus, which is the complete opposite, let's say. Cyprus is very open when it comes to drone usage. The MOD in Cyprus essentially has a map showing where there are restricted areas for drones, and you'll see by looking at it that there are a lot fewer restrictions than in Spain. Essentially, if we look at the map, you can only see a few main areas where there's controlled or restricted airspace, notably around Larnaca and Paphos airports, around the British sovereign base areas, and around certain protected areas and over certain buildings or areas of major cities, leaving you with a massive chunk of the island where you can actually go and film. And having done this myself, I was able to get some incredible shots around Paphos and near Coral Bay, thanks to there being a lot more open areas on the airspace map. And so, as I say, this will very much vary by country, and it's important to check out the country that you're going to and their kind of airspace maps that are available. I'll put a link in the video description of a site that has the links to all of the different EASA airspaces and the different restricted areas on them, which was really helpful. But just to give you a kind of a summary here of which are the tricky countries to fly in, I would say definitely Spain, as I've mentioned in this video. France is mentioned as quite tricky to fly in. Germany, Austria also mentioned as quite challenging, along with Italy as well. On the other hand, you've got countries with a lot fewer restrictions, like Cyprus, like I mentioned in this video, countries like Croatia, Finland, the Baltic countries, and Portugal, a bit more relaxed than some of the other countries in the EASA group. Nevertheless, across the EASA, there are some common rules and themes that you should keep in mind. They're pretty common sense rules, let's be honest, but let's go through them in any case, just to make them clear. First, it's advised really not to fly over crowds of people, because as cool as drones are and being able to film them, you know, not everyone understands what drones are doing. Some people get uncomfortable, they may feel that they're being filmed, they don't really know what this strange flying object is. So honestly, it's better to try and avoid groups of people if you can, where possible. Stay away from private property. Of course, you know, if you're flying a drone into someone's backyard, then that can definitely upset them. You might lose your drone, you might be accused of invading people's privacy, so definitely stay away from private property. Avoid controlled airspace, as I said, near airports, helipads, aerodromes, unless you have express permission from the traffic controllers in those controlled airspace. The maximum permitted altitude for drones within the EASA countries is 120 meters, so don't exceed 120 meters. A lot of drones probably won't be able to exceed that in any case, unless they are very, very powerful or specialized drones. And finally, it's really important to maintain visual line of sight as well. So that means you need to keep your drone somewhere where you can see it with your two eyes at any time. That means always having visibility with your own eyes of where your drone is at any point in time. Not relying on the screen, whether it's, you know, around the corner or hidden by a tree or something. No, you have to be able to see it with your eyes. A final tip I would say as well, that as fun as flying a drone is, it can be quite stressful sometimes, especially depending on the weather, where you're flying, and to add all of this regulation on top of it as well, you know, it can make it a bit of an unnerving experience, at least from my perspective, which shouldn't be the case. But to ease your mind, ease the pressure a little bit, you know, drone insurance can be really helpful when it comes to that as well. I used an insurer called Cover Drone, not sponsored content or anything like that. But what I can say is very easy to get drone insurance, you know, very good prices as well. You can get it by day, by month, or you can get annual subscriptions. And of course, whilst it's not going to cover you if you break any rules, it just gives you the peace of mind that, you know, if you have an accident with your drone or something like that, you've got something to back you up and it covers you up to a certain amount. So that's my suggestion as well. So I hope you found this video helpful and informative, guys. I am quite new to the drone world myself and flying drones, and so I'm sure there's people watching that have more insight regarding, you know, the categorization of drones or specifics and technical aspects of the drones. But coming from kind of a regulatory point of view and being able to use your drone in Europe, I hope this was helpful nevertheless. Leave a comment and let me know about your experience flying drones in Europe as well. If you like this video and you want to see more content related to travel abroad, then be sure to check out these two videos here. So next time, I'll see you on the next one, and let's get this money.